Hey y'all, it's Red, your favorite non-binary creative wellness coach, here with something new today. I was getting a little too bogged down in Brene Brown's Daring Greatly, so we're going to look at Anne Lamott's Bird by Bird this time. Okay, so in a few of my writing classes, this book came up several times, and now I know why. It's pretty good. I do have to have a bit of a warning though. It was written in 94 and some of the language and stories are a little bit dated, and we'll get into that a little bit. So, this book is an honest look at Lamott's experience with writing itself, life itself, editing, publishing, teaching classes, all of that. So she tends to be pretty sarcastic, but not in a horribly cynical way. So it doesn't take away from the truth of the book, except a few times. It does seem to like she's pushing it a little hard, but I think she's got a point to that. So she, like I said, she shares stories about the teaching classes and painful experiences, and then she also talks about how the practice of writing is part of trying to find belonging and making meaning, and for deeper understanding and connection to the world around us. So let's get into a few of the things that she talked about a little more in depth, okay? I've got my little note cards, because memorization is hard. Rip Red. Okay, so one of the first categories that I wrote down that she tended to write about is why write at all? Why do it? It's hard, right? So basically, she talks about how writing, you need to be to write, you need to be able to cultivate reverence for our world and increase awareness and acceptance for the wonders and wildness of life. And in what case would that be bad? Right? And writing also decreases isolation. Even if you're doing it on your own, you're still being inspired by other things, other experiences that you've had or witnessed. And I talked about that in some other video too. And it can also help decrease isolation if you're part of writing groups, which she highly recommends. Even if you're not trying to publish, it's great to be able to talk with like-minded people and think in the same way and get new ideas. And you can, as a writer, explore what it means to be alive. And Anne asks, how alive are you willing to be? Because you have to get real honest. You have to go to the depths, You can't just leave everything at like, oh, my characters had a disagreement about the dishes, and that's it. That's the whole novel. No, you got to get into some shit, right? And everybody experiences difficulties, so you just have to see how willing you are to express those difficulties in order to connect more deeply with both yourself and readers, if you want readers. Though this book makes it very clear that writing is very good, even if you're not trying to get anybody to read your stuff. Also, writing in general, and if you share it, it's important and meaningful to find purpose in contributing to community and lore. We've been sharing stories since the dawn of time. Right? That's how our history got passed down, right? I know the winners usually tell the stories, but you know what I mean. And told in your own humor and your own voice, your own tone, your own language, it's even more meaningful. And you also, another reason to write is that you also learn to trust yourself and the movement of life. And my own thoughts about this is that, like, in trusting yourself and at the same time letting life be life, it gives you less of an out to have the mindset of, victim mentality and then the blaming mentality, right? Because, shit happens. You've been watching shit happen, observing purposefully for your characters. Life is wild, and sometimes we just can't control it. You can't always just be waiting for the other shoe to drop or try to control the other shoe dropping, because like I said in one of my videos with Daring Greatly, if you try to hold back a shitty shoe from dropping on your head, you're also going to hold back maybe like Cinderella's true love diamond slipper falling on your head. I don't know. Good and bad things come from control. Writing can also help you see and express similarities by pointing out differences in experiences through characters. It can show similar worries, reasons, habits, beliefs, childhood, traumatic childhood experiences, through what you keep and what you leave out in dialogue, action, and set design. Body language is like over 70% of how humans communicate, and tone itself is a huge percentage of how humans communicate. That's a whole other story. And we can see that people's motivations might be similar, even if the steps they take towards their goals are different. The dog just got on the new couch. Okay. We'll take care of that later. Okay. Writing also gives you as a writer and the reader the power to make meaning out of what alone might seem purposeless. You can do this by looking at character development, looking at what changes by the end of the story within the character or what they changed externally, why that happened, and what it could affect in the future. And you can use this to inform your own motivations and actions in your own life. Or do the opposite and be like, that's something that I don't want to try, right? Lamott encourages anyone of any skill level to write, since the skills one needs to be a writer, or more like the passions one needs to be a writer, make the world a better, more aware place. It helps us find the truth in things, the truth in our hearts and in our commonality, and the truth in the significance of our differences. To really get this truth out and do the actual writing, that's the rub, right? Lamott also gives a few strategies, and she goes into better depth, but I'm just going to touch on the ones that I really liked. Is that one is to write militantly. I really like that she used that word. This book is not about doing things militantly, but that made it more precise for me. Make sure that you write every day. Make sure that you write trash. There's this entire chapter devoted to shitty first drafts. Because if you don't have that trash and the foundation of the message and of what's happening, then you'll never get to decorate the house and make it better. Because, you can't start out with the bird feeder, right? I mean, you could, but that would probably also be trash, right? She also suggests to write 300 words a day, and I just tried this, and it's working for me. 300 words really ain't that much, okay? 2,100 words a week is a lot more than 0, right? And she also suggests to choose a tiny part to get through each day. Describe what's going on in your story as if you were describing a square inch of a photograph. And then if that leads you somewhere, let that lead you somewhere. And then if you're really, 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 really blocked, after your 300 words, whether they have to do with your novel or your story, whatever you're doing, take a break, let your unconscious relax. You know, it's when we're sleeping that we have the best ideas, right? Middle of the night. So go out into nature, let your brain breathe, let it put the pieces together in the background, right? Yes, she also has a few other strategies, such as writing letters from your characters, and you can read more about that. I will say now that the dated language in this book has to do with the 90s perception of mental disabilities. And it makes sense that she used it back then, but I do wish there was another version of the book now, because knowing her skill and having read the specific parts with the issues in them, they would easily be edited with just like few keywords to make them not shitting on the people that she's not trying to talk down about. You know what I mean? Like, there are ways that you could just change like 2 or 3 words and the message would still be just as potent and wise and funny. Like, it would be funnier probably, because it wouldn't be trashing people with certain mindsets, habits. Yeah. So just, there's even like a whole chapter where she goes to the Special Olympics, and it's just like, I'm sure in the 90s and 94 it was a beautiful story, but the way that it's expressed, reading it now, it's like, okay, like, you know, language has changed. I think that I think this book would deserve another go round, another issue. What are they called? I don't know. Version. If it were just edited just like a little bit in those places. So, if you want a pretty fun book about some writing realities, I recommend Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. Make sure you have your time travel goggles on for the more dicey dated language. And throughout this book, you know, not related to the language, throughout this book, I laughed, and I also cried a few times. And I was also majorly inspired to keep doggedly working on my novel in a sustainable way and not, you know, hate myself for not making XYZ goal and hitting XYZ goal, right? If you read or have read this book, please let me know what you think about it. Was it inspiring to you too? Did it fall flat? I'd love to know. Till then, I hope you have a great day.